And welcome to another episode of Tiger Territory, a Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Foul Territory Network. I am Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, is a man who is considerably hotter than the snows at Comerica Park this winter. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
Doing all right. It's been a little colder than I bargained for here at Winter Meetings in Dallas, and the hotel is very cold. But when you see there's snow on the ground in Detroit, it's like, not the worst time to get away.
Yeah, I think I saw we're recording this Thursday night, a day later, because we wanted to make sure there was, maybe something else may happen or whatever. As of now, this is kind of a moot point, but we were anticipating the possibility, so we wanted to be able to talk about things that are fresh. And to Scott Harris's credit, he did not give us all that much fresh, but we'll talk about that too. All right, because he kind of addresses that too when he talks to the media. So again, to his credit. I had a good time hanging out in winter meetings in the PM. So it was great to hang out with my boy Cody. Don't get to do that as much as obviously I would like, living, in the South, if you would, while you're over there in the glorious Midwest. So it's been a good time. A little programming note too. We met up with Austin Jackson. We have a episode that we will do here very shortly as sort of his introduction into Tiger territory. So I want you guys to be on the lookout for that as the holiday. We're going to have episode before Christmas. All right. So make sure that we are part of your holiday routine, because let's be honest, you're probably going to want to escape it for a little bit. Let us be that escape. All right. To the nitty gritty, the headline, if you would, Cody, of winter meetings was the Tigers signed a starting pitcher, which we all knew that they would. And we were kind of like, we did this exercise. I say we, mainly you, did this exercise where it's like, all right, I'm going to put on my Scott Harris hat and I'm going to examine the markets. And you had some great ideas. I thought they all made a lot of sense. This one did not make the cut. That's okay. That's why we're doing what we're doing and they're doing what they're doing. Alex Cobb is officially a Detroit Tiger. He signs a 1-year deal for $15 million. There's $1 million incentives for the 140 and the 150 innings pitch plateau, something that is not all that recent on his resume. He didn't really pitch all that much last year for injury reasons. But Alex Cobb is a Tiger, and that's kind of the headline of the week so far, and that is where we will start. So, Cody, your thoughts when you saw the news. You talked to the brass actually earlier today. You even talked to Alex himself. Your thoughts on the Cobb signing?
Yeah, Alex Cobb definitely had not really been on my radar, so wrong again, despite my best efforts on this one. I feel a little bad. I kind of just dismissed him because it's like, okay, he's 37 and he's had a ton of injuries. Like I thought Scott Harris signing him with the Giants thing was slightly interesting, but it was like, it doesn't really seem like a 37-year-old broken guy is going to be their profile, especially when it's all about optimization. Normally the guys who are easier to tweak are going to be somewhat younger pitchers. That was at least why I didn't spend much time researching Alex Cobb, prior to this signing. Now they signed him, 15 mil? That's what catches people's eyes. That's a lot of cash. That's also this market, and I think on a 1-year deal, the AAV doesn't really matter. But that's a steep price for a guy who threw 16 innings last season. And I think there's this uproar, like Alex Cobb, really, the fans, generally speaking, wanted Walker Buehler. And Walker Buehler is a very talented guy, but then, I kind of stepped back and was like, okay. So Alex Cobb, pretty good track record when he's healthy. He's been a solid, stable pitcher. He's going to bring veteran leadership. Everyone I talked to in the league this week, writers, other team personnel are like, you're going to love this guy. He is a great human being. And it's like, okay, well, you want that? Or why does everyone love Walker Buehler so much? I mean, I like him. He's got a ton of potential in his arm, but he didn't pitch 2 years ago. He had a 5.38 ERA this year. I had an exchange with one other writer, and I was like, yeah, Cobb, he's not Walker Buehler, but, and the guy goes, oh, so he's actually going to be good? So, there's some who view Walker Buehler that way. Just because Walker Buehler plays for a high-profile team and has pitched in the postseason, I don't think that means that this Alex Cobb signing is terrible. It's not getting people jazzed. It's not going to sign season tickets. You're going to get a back into the rotation starter who is a good clubhouse guy, who, if he can stay healthy, is going to be a completely solid pitcher. The Tigers think they have some things in mind to get a little bit more out of him, get a little more swing and miss. That was another thing I did not like about him. But very low walk rates, very high ground ball rates, throws a split, platoon neutral. Those are things the Tigers like, and Alex Cobb does check those boxes. So I give it a real nice B, a real strong B.
Do you remember what, and I don't even know if we said it, but the grade for Flaherty at the time? Like your grade?
I don't think I gave it a grade, but it probably would have been like a C minus. So,
yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing about Cobb. Like, the things that are sexy for these kind of free agent signings, like, don't necessarily check the boxes with Cobb. So he's going to be in his age 37 season. Not very sexy. He had the 2 years in San Francisco, which is a part of this transaction, if you think about it, and it's kind of been said. And then, like, there were some years that he, just in terms of output, he just didn't give you anything. So, like, in 2021, 93 innings. We throw out 2020, but for the record, he pitched 52 innings. 12 innings in 2019. And then 2018, he had the 150 plateau other than his 2 years in San Francisco. Like, there's a gap there of him actually being available for whatever that's worth. And then obviously you mentioned last year with the different injuries. And this is where, in my opinion, I don't think anybody's really talking about it. This is where sort of the sports science element of the Tigers is going to become just as key as the actual pitching lab, because he's got those injuries that become worse because the body's not moving in unison, right? So it's like lower body, upper body.
He's had hip surgery, that's more concerning in some ways than an arm.
Yes, and I think about this all the time. Former Oklahoma State offensive coordinator Mike Yurcich, everything affects everything, and in the pitching motion, that's more true probably than on the football field. So, like, there's elements there, and then the price point. No one actually cares, Cody, in my opinion, about 1 year deal like money. Even if you're one of those spend guys, like, no one really cares. It's 1 year. Who gives a rip? I think the perception of, all right, sign Alex Cobb, $15 million. Please don't tell me this is your version of spending. It's kind of like in The Office when Michael Scott has the big surprise and he brings the ice cream sandwiches, and Stanley's like, "It's not the big surprise, is it? Is it the big surprise? Is it?" And that's kind of like the Cobb signing metaphorically. It doesn't mean he can't be good. Doesn't mean all those intangible stuff. We know that that's going to be valuable for this team. But at the same time, it didn't feel like a move that, as I've talked about, was one of those elevation type moves. We're a team of this status. Doesn't mean it can't be valuable and they're going to do their work on him and blah, blah, blah. But it does not match sort of like that emotional threshold. Now, I will say this, though. At least this is not a signing that we're here talking about. We've spent about 5 minutes on it or whatever. This is at least not a signing that we're saying, all right, well, come late July, what are you going to get for Alex Cobb? So, like, in a way that there is organizational progress.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the more interesting kind of downstream effects of this is, like, Tigers came out and said they're not really seeking another starting pitcher, which somewhat surprised when I saw, that the signing was Cobb, that it was a 1 year deal. Look, they have plenty of rotation candidates. Spring training is going to be really interesting in that regard. But do you feel great about any of them beyond Tarek Skubal and Reese Olson? You're going to have Skubal, you're going to have Olson, you're going to have Cobb. Like it or not, Kenzema is probably coming to spring training as a starter. And then you're going to have Mize, Manning, Madden, Herder, Cater Montero, who's probably not being talked about enough, and some other guys kind of all battling it out for one spot, assuming they do not add any more pitching. And we'll talk about a certain international pitcher here in just a second. But I don't know. I wouldn't hate it if they still were trying to sign Walker Buehler or Jack Flaherty, but it does not seem like that is the team's intention.
It seems to me like you got to have some uncomfortable conversations. Like this is a team right now that is as glorious as that playoff run was. In order to advance, some uncomfortable conversations are going to have to be had. And the starting pitching, like sort of in-house options, like those are going to be some tough conversations there.
And look, at the same time, Tigers had the best ERA in baseball from August 1st on. And one thing Alex Cobb said today, like he goes like, I heard this from other players, and then I experienced it myself when I met with the Tigers. Their pitch, pun intended, to pitchers is just a little bit different. He said different data, a better language of explaining things and how they think they can help you. And we've already seen the fruits of this, and it's increasingly clear the Tigers do know what they are doing with pitching. So maybe there's no real need for them to devote more resources to that part of their ball club.
Sure, and again, like the 15 million part, like plays in the perception of like it doesn't feel like a buy low spot on Alex Cobb that like they're going to be able to get so much out of. You know what I mean? Like again, what does it matter? Like nothing really, but that's all it is right now as we sit here December 12th. Like it's all speculation and kind of just like seeing like what the direction of whether you're kind of making winter headlines, which Scott Harris, I'm pretty sure, has said this before, if not this week. Like he don't care about winter headlines. He doesn't even view winter meetings as what did he say? It was like it's not the end of the road. It's kind of like the middle.
He said we get seduced by the idea that winter meetings is a finish line. This ever seductive winter meetings, and really it's not even the halfway point. I mean, he is absolutely right. This is one reason winter meetings still exist. It is a time in what can be a quiet winter where suddenly there's media attention on the game. And look, some big things happen. Juan Soto signed, Max Fried signed. There's some other notable moves. Garrett Crochet gets traded, but we still got a while to go here. So we got a lot to get to. Maybe we should move on to one Roki Sasaki, because in the most un-Scott Harris thing ever, he just came out and said, no, we want this guy. Not used to having direct talks with the Tigers president of baseball operations like that in regard to targets and interests and blah, blah, blah. But Sasaki has been posted. I think the question becomes, we know the Tigers want him. Sasaki's agent, Joe Wolf, said some very interesting things like, a mid-market might be good for him. It's less media pressure because this guy's been under a lot of scrutiny from the Japanese press. It's been really hard on him mentally, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of raised your eyebrows. Is there any substance to that? Who knows? Clearly the Tigers want him. Clearly they're motivated. Money's not an issue here. He's capped because he'll be coming as on a minor league contract. The most he can get, most likely, like no team has more than about $7.5 million to play with unless they make some trades and acquire more bonus pool money. Now, a complicating factor, our team's going to break existing, unofficial, technically illegal handshake deals with their international prospects. Tigers just happen to have what's expected to be about a $3.5-ish million commitment with Chris Rodriguez, who I think is ranked number 4 on a lot of boards. He's going to be their biggest and best international signing in a long time. And I've been told that they're not going to break that commitment. So that does ding perhaps what they could potentially offer to Sasaki. Joe Wolf, the agent, said, we're not necessarily worrying too much about that. They're thinking long-term. They're thinking, okay, he comes here, he gets this bonus, whatever. In 3 years, we're going to get him paid big time. So that doesn't necessarily take the Tigers out of it. But I think that's what everyone wants to know. Like, do these guys have a real shot? And tough to know without knowing what Sasaki's preferences are. I still lean toward, like, they can have a compelling pitch. They can play ball financially. Still hard to see Roki Sasaki choosing the Detroit Tigers over 29 other teams in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to envision that, but I'm trying to like get my point across without being like too repetitive. But if there was an environment that would result in the Tigers getting this world-class talent, it's everything here where your best asset is not your checkbook, basically. And honestly, they are at the top-ish of teams with money available. So even with commitments notwithstanding, just in general with the pool money, like they're in the top tier. So if you think that this is your superpower. And shout out Dan Hasty, who I had the opportunity to meet at Winter Meetings. That was awesome. But if this is your superpower, this is how you exercise your superpower. You know what I mean? So like there will never be another opportunity to get a hyped international prospect like Sasaki than this right now, because if it's a hitter, you can't sell it the same way. And if it's somebody who comes in the, I guess you would say, like the more traditional route that we're used to, then you're in a bidding war, and we know they don't want to be in a bidding war. So like I did love to see Scott Harris like say, I mean, he had to be more casual. It's like every team in baseball wants him, but he just be like, yeah, we want him. And I think if like we can present as good an opportunity for him as any team, if not better, and which is more or less true if you believe in the Tigers brass and what they've done with pitching. Who shout out Chris Fetter, who just got named assistant coach of the year by, I believe, Baseball America.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Chris Fetter.
There you go. Like, you know, the guy you're going to be working most closely with, like, he just got named the best assistant coach in baseball. So, like, you know, boom. Like, who else can say that? Nobody. So, real shot, they have to have a real shot, because it could be BS, but the agent's like, yeah, market doesn't necessarily matter. He doesn't have to be in the shadow of an Ohtani. You know, maybe he doesn't want to go quite East Coast. Sometimes that's a thing, you know, with players from Japan. And they have I know they've addressed, like, does he know Maeda, but there is a actual blueprint for taking care of international players from Asia that is technically existing on the Tigers right now. So it's not something they have to theoretically say they can do. They are actively doing it.
It's good that they've done it before. I'm not sure Kenta Maeda is a riveting success story, and it also seems
I'm just talking about like the like how you handle everything. You know, like. Yeah.
It also seems like Sasaki's not really like close with Kenta Maeda. I think, and this is not reporting, this is just like most people in the league still seem to think he's just going to go to the Dodgers. And if he doesn't, I think the number 2 destination might just be the Seattle Mariners, who also know what they're doing in terms of pitching. East Coast be a little closer to Japan. They have the Ichiro tie. You know, I'm sure the Tigers will make a compelling pitch, but it's going to be interesting on how they're going to really sell Roki Sasaki to say, you should come here. You can come anywhere, and you should come here to Detroit. They have a case. I am still not optimistic that they'll ultimately win out.
So speaking of cases that we're not sure about ultimately winning out,
we got a few of those.
So obviously you mentioned earlier the big domino to fall, and there have been a couple of other big dominoes that had gone on before, but Juan Soto is now officially a New York Met. So nobody has to play the winning game. Scott Boras doesn't have to divert attention away from his other millions, or his firm, other millions of clients that they got over there. Bregman becomes all of a sudden one of the biggest fish in the pond. And it feels like, to me, I don't know, like I'm going through like weird emotions in my head, Cody, where I'm like, logically speaking, if whatever he's asking for is probably not going to be great, especially at the end. However, like the more I just kind of sit on, like, yeah, but you kind of have a decent opportunity to bring in Alex Bregman, who does this, and intangibly is this. It's hard for me to like stomach like really being on the sidelines, and of course, because it's the Harris regime, we have no actual idea about whether they're in the playing field or not, because everyone just kind of lumps them in there because of the Hinch connection. But but to me, like, I do think it becomes more realistic. I don't know why I think that, but I think there is a world where it is more realistic for him to join the Tigers if certain things happen, like sort of outside of their control and outside of Bregman's control. I don't know. It's a gut feeling.
Yeah, it's the reporting that's out there is not much more than smoke. Like, I think the Tigers are in on him. Does that mean they will win out? Probably not. But I think, I'll just opine for a second. I think the Tigers should give Alex Bregman whatever he wants. If you're not going to spend now, when are you going to spend all this when the time is right? You're coming off a surprise playoff appearance. You say you need a right-handed bat. You say you want veteran leadership. This is this is the guy. This guy checks every box. He's a good defender. He can hit. Yeah, long-term deals are a little bit scary, but if you want to win a World Series, you're going to have to be able to make one or two of these at some point. You should be under no financial limitations. It seems like the Tigers don't want to go up to the 200 million mark that Bregman is seeking. I don't think the Astros want to go there either. Is he really the Yankees' top choice? Does that open the door for the Red Sox? So I think there's a world where the Tigers are very much in on this room, but I think they're hoping that these other teams just kind of bow out and the price tag comes down. That's kind of my sense for what's going on here. And the AJ Hinch factor, that's not nothing. But Bregman's probably going to make the decision based on money, yeah. And why wouldn't he?
As he should.
And if we're going on emotional ties, then most likely Houston is going to be, above the Tigers on that list. There's a way the Tigers can get them, though. Pay up, given what these other teams aren't willing to give. I said I wanted to come away from winter meetings with a sense of whether the Tigers actually had any interest in playing ball atop the market. And the comments from Scott Harris and Jeff Greenberg were, kind of this murky double talk as much as ever. If anything, I got this, there were no hints that suddenly they want to be aggressive. So that's kind of my read on the situation right now.
Well, hell, I mean, when you have Scott Harris saying the price of free agents is it's just I don't want to misquote him, but basically he said that it's getting kind of steep, it's getting expensive. Again, not directly quoting him for the record, but it's getting expensive. And
I got the quote. One observation is free agent prices continue to rise. It's at a pretty staggering rate, which is not a criticism of the players. Classic Scott, throw this in there. They definitely deserve it. But what we've seen is that the market is off to a really fast pace.
So you make those comments. It's hard for me to imagine that you're in anything that resembles a bidding war. And look, his perspective is not inherently wrong. However,
no, it's right.
But now you kind of have to, if you're a fan, if you're media following the team, you have to kind of move your scope a little bit. Where it's if he's going to say this just in general, then it's hard to imagine going for one of the top free agents. And so then you start having, all right, now we have the Bierling and Young thing and blah, 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 which he just real quick on Young. We did get an update on him medically. He had a wrist surgery. I believe it was right wrist.
I believe that's right.
Okay. Well,
minor wrist procedure. He's expected to be healthy for spring training.
So just for the record on that. Again, Scott Harris has made this a domain of young players. He said that from day one. It wouldn't and then it's kind of like people in an election year talking about inflation. It's the prices are going up. It's hard to imagine that he's going into the Bregman waters. But, Alex Bohm, he gets traded somewhere to some team, and then they're out of the sweepstakes. Those are the kind of things that maybe if the patient approach could work out, but I wouldn't necessarily bank on it. But I'm with you where it's there's so many reasons to do something. In this case, sign Bregman is one of those reasons. And I think it'd be a bane for the organization in multiple facets. So,
yeah, quick update on some other third base options. I don't know if I've said this one before. Alec Bohm, the Tigers don't seem to really like Alec Bohm. There's not much interest there. And Arenado, as we talked about, he has a no trade clause, and Detroit is, he doesn't really want to come to Detroit. So right now they are not on the teams he would approve a deal to. Wonder if there's a world where maybe no one else wants him and AJ could call him up and get him on the phone. But right now, you want a real third baseman. Bregman's the one guy. I mean, Ha-Seong Kim, I wonder if Ha-Seong Kim's going to be who they end up signing. I think there's a lot of signals pointing more in that direction. But that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, and we'll have some time to talk about Kim as well. Let's talk about the other corner. The other corner.
becoming a timeless topic on
Yep.
Tiger territory.
And chances are it will remain for a while unless some huge move happens or somebody pops. So we can. That might be a topic forever, but we might be able to retire the joke, Cody, about guys not getting an opportunity to break in their first baseman because we got Jay Hen and we got Cole Keith. They're going to start doing some workouts, taking grounders at first base, having the optionality, if you would. It's a great thing to do in general because there's literally no downside, number one. Number two, if I was Torque, I would have a fire underneath my ass. So, and it probably shouldn't be there anyway. But finally, it's like
I
they
was going
really
to say,
listen to us.
can we I don't know. Can we just celebrate real quick? Jay Hen is going to take grounders at first base. The most obvious thing ever. It's actually going to happen. That is terrific. And Cole Keith, I mean, right when I gave up on the idea that would ever happen, he's now doing it sooner than I would have expected. Welcome to the Tigers, baby. The justification from Scott Harris, from AJ Hinch, totally aligns with their ethos. It's all about the optionality. The example that was kind of given is so you got a righty on the mound, righty who sucks against lefties. You can go an all left-handed infield. If you move Colt over to first, you could go McKinstry, Sweeney, Young, Colt Keith. So this is also going to open some time, I think, for Jace Young to go back to second. JN just gives them a viable path to a roster spot. Maybe late game substitutions. Maybe Colt could move from second to first, and a guy like Andy Ibanez could play up the middle for the defensive benefit. That seems to be the gist of why they're doing it. But you start, you put it all on the whiteboard and connect the dots, and it still makes me think that it shows the Tigers would like a third baseman, perhaps more than a first baseman, because now you got JN, you got Colt, and you have one Spencer Torkelson.
And real quick, I'm gonna, until something happens, I'm gonna have this Torque quote from Harris in my mind from his availability, and I want the quote to be read, but I'm just telling you, every time I hear him talk about Torque, it's just me. I just feel like I don't know if he's loving what he's seeing and loving the fact that he was a 1-1. Like when you start saying phrases like he was a 1-1 for a reason, right? That you could hate him till the cows come home, but you say he's a 1-1 for a reason. It sounds okay, So I just don't get good vibes, man. I just don't. And I'm not watching the videos all the time, but every time he talks about it, I'm like, I just, the vibes just aren't good, man.
So the quote, Harris was more or less asked, where do you guys stand with Torque? Are you all in on him, or how else are you upgrading first base? Scott said, the point still stands that the performance has to get better, and it's not just offensive performance, it's defensive performance too. We're exploring ways to get better in all aspects of our team. He goes on, he talks some about optionality, and that's kind of, I don't know. I had my performance review this week at The Athletic, and if my review from my boss would have been, the performance has to get better, and it's not just offensive performance, it's defensive performance, I would not be feeling too comfortable right now. But at the same time, it seems like they're going to give this thing a go, even though all the words are, you're not getting that vibe of confidence in Torque from the front office.
Yeah, I forget what word I used when we were talking about this on Monday, but it's it feels like a little bit of a yeah, guy, you kind of got to figure it out. Everything you got to figure it out, because I don't think we can do the go down to Toledo for 2 months thing again. The Torque is in danger of the team passing him by. That's how I'll phrase it.
Absolutely.
Whether that's because just of him, and whether that's a combination of him / where the team's going. There's no I don't feel he's earmarked all that much. That's how I'll phrase it. How I'll phrase it for Torque as of now.
I mean, if they don't bring anyone else, by default, he might be earmarked a good chunk. But man, I don't know. That's it's a tough thing to discuss.
We're always going to talk about it until something changes, because like if you want to upgrade your roster right now, there's like the team's getting good enough to where the spots aren't like there aren't that many spots that you either can or have to upgrade. And I say the can part because like, you know, things like shortstop rare with the hobby contract, you're not just like signing a dummies, right? So like, you know, like there's only so many spots you can realistically upgrade year to year. You know, you can't do everything in 1 year anyway. So like,
we just saw, we didn't even talk about this, but like when they signed Cobb, they DFA'd Akil Baddoo.
Yeah.
There's a guy that things just kind of passed him by, and he was still a good depth to have. The reason they tendered him, or at least part of the rationale, is a better way to phrase it, is like if they would have non-tendered him, he just becomes a free agent. When he's DFA'd, tendered a contract, he is now in waivers, and if he clears, and there's a chance he could because he's making a little more than the average guy on waivers, he's automatically stays in the system and he's outrighted to Toledo. So there's a world where the Tigers can keep Akil Baddoo, but this is a guy who not long ago was on the upswing. Al Avila was saying he's part of our future, and just a couple of quick years later, you know, Akil's been DFA'd.
Yep. And real quick, speaking of Rule 5, no Rule 5 acquisitions or draft picks, I should say, for the Tigers, but they did lose Liam Hicks and Gage Workman for I forget what teams took each one of them. I should have wrote that down.
Cubs took Workman, Marlins took Hicks.
Yeah. So so there you go. So there's an example of the Tigers bucking on one trend, at least they've done the past couple of
years. My masterpiece Liam Hicks story is ruined. This guy was on, if you recall, on the Tigers taxi squad, and with them for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. This guy who they got at the trade deadline came straight up from Erie and was doing snow angels in a puddle of champagne in Houston. Like, the players just loved him. You know, they didn't even know him, but they embraced him, had so much fun. And I interviewed him and never used any of it because there were a million more pressing things going on at the time. And I was like, I'm going to break this baby out in spring training. That dream is dashed. And Workman's interesting. One of these guys that has always just kind of oozed with potential. Big body, good fielders, got some real raw power, but he struck out a ton. Had a really resurgent year in Erie, cut his strikeout rate by like 10 percentage points, had I think 18 homers. A guy you would like to have kept, but if the Tigers had real faith in him, I think they probably would have protected him on the 40-man. So, you know, these are the like, and are the Cubs really going to carry him for a full year? Like, it seems pretty risky for a guy who is still very prone to strikeouts.
Yeah, it's a good point. Might not. Don't delete that file yet, Cody. For Hicks, you just never know. You never know.
Yeah, that's true. To be a catcher, like, that's tough. You're a catcher on the roster, you got to play. So I guess Miami's a place where you can get plenty of playing time. But we'll see how that goes. One more nugget I wanted to get to. One more thing that people are going to be disappointed in. You know, I asked Scott Boras, Boras was talking about the early pre-arb or pre-free agency extensions and saying, like, yours truly has long been an advocate of waiting, but for certain guys, blah, blah, blah. And then he was talking about Gunnar Henderson and how he's one of the real superstars in the game. And so then I asked Boras, like, how does this concept apply to Scooble, and have you had real talks with the Tigers? And friend of the pod, Scotty B, did not answer part 2 of that question. And he talked real generally about how, like, just it comes down to the player and choices. So we didn't really learn much, but a big sense I came away with talking to some other agents and people at winter meetings is like, the odds are just so slim because Scooble is a Boras client and because he's an elite talent. So, you know, not necessarily the most inspiring news there. And I think your other extension candidate would be Riley Green. I've always said a more realistic extension candidate. The Tigers have not had any real discussions with Riley. regarding an extension. So there's really, nothing to even talk about there right now.
So the best illustration is Cody and I are at a sports bar watching football, eating chicken wings on Sunday, and he shows me a tweet from what Juan Soto turned down from the Nationals, and I can't remember. It was like
440 million.
440 million over.
It's a lot of money to turn down.
And he said nah. And then the Padres were probably they probably would have offered something similar, and he was like nah. And the Yankees probably had some sort of like feeler for an extension, and he was like nah. And turned out to be the right financial move for him. So
765. It's a pretty big gap, even from 400.
Yeah.
He almost doubled it by waiting 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, case in point. So the uneasiness is not going to go away anytime soon, but regardless, he is still your guy. He is still Detroit's guy, and it really immersed himself in the city. So that's all still well and good, but I just wouldn't advise anybody to hold their breath on that. All right, we can get out of here. Once again, I want to repeat, sometime before Christmas, you'll find a podcast with Cody, myself, and Austin Jackson. Looking forward to that, and then we will tease our second one with him there as well. So be sure to be following us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cody Stavenhagen. I am at Kieran_Steckley, pod page at Tiger Territory _. Be sure to follow us. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We are climbing the ranks. Excited about it. It's a lot of fun, and we appreciate everybody who has interacted with us on these digital platforms, because you're the reason we get to do this. So be sure to subscribe to The Athletics. You can read all of Cody's great work. And once again, I want to say, for Cody Stavenhagen, I am Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great weekend.